So I've got a little bit of news for you. I'm going to become a dad again. And by the time you guys see this video, my wife and I will be probably closer to 2 days in to the chaotic new way of living that having a new child brings with it. Now, I want to be crystal clear right at the top of this video. I'm not here to have a moan about becoming a dad for a second time. I'm genuinely excited about the prospect. I've been here before already with my son, who, despite it only feeling like yesterday that I brought him home from hospital, has just finished his first year in school and is now knocking on the door of 6 years old. People tell you that it goes fast and you don't always believe them. But the one day you kind of blink and the tiny baby that you carry through the front door is suddenly walking into school carrying his book bag, forming his own opinions, and arguably has a better social life than you do. And it really is a case of blink and you'll miss it. And that's probably why this feels so strange, because I know what's coming. I know how amazing it is and how lucky I am as an individual, but I also know that those early days are going to be really, really difficult and extremely tiring. You don't just lose the odd evening, you lose the shape of your week. You lose the quiet bits, you lose the little gaps where hobbies normally live. And over the last few months, I'll say it honestly, I've started to feel it happen. Riding has been harder to fit in. There's more to do, more to think about, and more people who need me. And when your family needs you, well, hobbies inevitably start to take a bit of a backseat. So my plan right now is once I finish filming this video, I'm going to head out on the bike and just enjoy it and have a bit of a ride around, because it's probably, most likely, going to be my last ride for a while. And that might seem dramatic to some people, but the parents of you that ride will know exactly what I mean. This isn't a video about having a baby. It's about what happens when life starts quietly pushing riding further and further down the priorities list. And I think this might be one of the main reasons why most riders sort of disappear. Life gets a little bit more full. Now let me just sort this mic out so I'm not holding it the whole time. A while ago, I made a video talking about the huge gap between the numbers of people who can ride motorcycles and the number of motorcycles actually being used on the road. And at the time, I looked at it as mostly an industry problem, linking things like training expenses, licensing complications, insurance, roads and potholes, dealers not selling enough bikes, and new sales struggling. And I've done an extensive back catalogue of videos on all of those topics. But I think there's a side of things which is much more human, is the best way to describe it. Sometimes riders don't leave because the industry has got an issue. They leave because life changes and personal circumstances switch up. And it doesn't happen all at once. You don't wake up one morning and just say to yourself, right, that's it, I'm done with riding, I'm selling the bike. It happens slowly. You miss one ride because the baby was up all night. You miss another because the weather was a bit crap. And then another because you promised your partner that you'd paint and decorate part of the house. Then the insurance renewal lands on the doorstep and you think to yourself, am I actually using the bike enough to keep justifying this cost? And before you know it, the thing that used to be part of your weekend life and your weekly day-to-day activity becomes something that you start talking about in past tense. I'll get back out on the bike when things calm down a bit. But life never really does calm down. I genuinely think that's where a lot of riders disappear. We fall into the quiet middle bit. And that's the bit that I want to talk about because, well, that's where I am right now. I'm not quitting motorcycling or YouTube, but I can absolutely see how some people would do that and how that mindset starts. Now, the most obvious reason that riding will take a backseat for many of us is probably time constraints. And whilst I know that sounds rather basic and not a very, deep observation, I don't think non-riders always understand just how much time motorcycling consumes. It's not just nipping out for a 1 hour ride, is it? There's all the bit that I refer to as the faffening that happens either side of going for the ride. You've got the faff of getting all the gear on. You've got the faff of getting the bike out the garage and checking it over, make sure the tyres are all fine, making sure the brakes are all working, your lights are all working. It's moving the car out of the way once you've blocked the garage door or the back garden gates. It's unlocking the various layers of security, your chains, your disc locks. It's taking the cover off. It's disconnecting the bike from the ground anchors and disconnecting what other medieval security devices you may have added because bike theft in the UK is a seriously ridiculous problem. Then you've actually got the ride itself, which is great fun. You've got an hour or two out on the bike. And then when you get back, the bike needs putting away. So all that work you did at the start needs doing in reverse. Or your kit needs to be put away nice and clean and tidy, ready for the next ride. All the security devices need putting back on. And before you know it, a 1 hour ride that you planned has never actually just been 1 hour. It becomes more like half a day. And before kids, half a day is fine. Before kids, you can lose half a day to something that you love and really enjoy and not really think about it. But when you've got a young family, half a day is a really big deal. Half a day is cleaning bottles. Half a day is doing the washing. Half a day is, giving your partner a bit of a break whilst you take the kids out for a walk. Half a day is taking your older child out on their own so that they don't feel pushed aside by the new baby. Having hobbies isn't wrong. Wanting time to yourself also isn't wrong or selfish. But when there's a newborn in the house, it can feel like every bit of personal time comes with a cost attached. And that cost is usually paid for by someone else. And whilst that is quite a subtle change in the question, I find it's quite an important reframing of the question. And that leads me on to the next point, which I think a lot of you guys, if you've been parents or are parents right now, will understand, even if you don't talk about it too much. And that's the guilt. Once you become a parent, time, for some reason, feels totally different. Before kids, you have so much more time on your hands. Your free time belongs to you and your partner. And after kids, your free time feels like something that you need to negotiate about more. And even if your partner is completely supportive, like mine is, there can still be that little voice in your head saying, should I be out on this ride? Or am I being selfish? And then when you're on the bike, you're doing that thing that normally clears your head completely. But part of your head is still at home with the family. And that's a strange feeling to remedy and come to terms with. Because motorcycling for me has always been one of those few things that completely pulls me into the moment that I'm living in. I talked about this in detail in my last video last week. When I'm riding, I'm not thinking about work or bills or YouTube analytics. I'm just there riding the bike. But parenting has a way of keeping a bit of your brain permanently reserved. You could be 5 miles from home, but part of you is still listening out for the baby monitor despite not being able to do anything about it, even if you could see it. And from a personal experience, I think that's one of the big reasons riding slows down after you have kids. It's not just a time constraint, it's the mental space and the ability to be fully somewhere and do something that is just for you. And for a while, that can feel really hard. And then there's the obvious risk factor. And this is one of those difficult topics to talk about on a motorcycle channel because every time you mention the risk of riding motorcycles, someone in the comments will think you're attacking riding. And I'm not. We all know riding carries a risk, and that's part of the deal when we get into it as a hobby. It doesn't mean riding is stupid or reckless or parents shouldn't ride because they should be thinking of their kids. But I do think becoming a parent changes how that risk feels on a more emotional level. When you're younger, or when you've only got yourself to worry about, you can look at the risk as a very individual thing. But when you've got a family, that changes because suddenly it's not just about you anymore. You've got people who rely on you and who that need you to come home. But that doesn't mean that you sell the bike and stop riding altogether and go out and buy yourself a sensible Volvo. Although if I am being completely honest with myself, my old 1 Series is getting a little long in the tooth and those XC60s do look quite fancy. But what it does mean is the thought process changes. I know for myself that I ride differently. I pick my moments and I think twice about riding when the weather's not so good or when I'm feeling a little bit tired. Maybe that's just maturity, or maybe that's just me being honest about where I am in my life. But it does add another layer of friction. And friction is the enemy of all hobbies, not just motorcycling. Most hobbies don't just vanish because we as individuals stop caring. They vanish because the effort starts to outweigh the reward of taking part in the activity. And that's where motorcycling is extremely vulnerable because bikes are brilliant, but they're also extremely high friction, especially in the UK. The weather is unreliable at the best of times, and we have a very brief summer. The roads are not exactly relaxing. I've done videos on this topic as well. They're covered in potholes, and some of them are just not suitable for motorcycling. Security is a faff. Insurance can be absolutely brutal. Gear is expensive. And before you know it, it all starts to add up. But if you're riding every single week, you can justify all of that because it's part of your life. But when you're only riding twice, maybe 3 times in a fortnight, Suddenly all those costs start to look a bit different, and the bike becomes less of a hobby and more of a very expensive garage ornament. Bikes are rarely essential. Not for most of us anyway. They're emotional and they're personal. They're part of our identity, but they're not essential in the same way that like your mortgages or buying food, childcare or school shoes, all the essential things in life. And this is where I think the motorcycle industry often misses the point when it talks about rider numbers and the decline in motorcycling. It's often seen as all about getting a younger set of bloodlines through the doors, getting younger riders in and removing barriers to entry. But with the rise of e-bikes, the routes into motorcycling have completely changed. So in reality, it shouldn't just be about getting new riders in. It should be looking at ways of keeping people in it who are already in it, whose life may have changed and shifted slightly. When the bike sits unused for one winter and somehow never really comes back out again, then the real rider retention problem starts to exasperate. If someone were to ask me what was the biggest problem for motorcycling right now, I'd just say life in general. It is one of the biggest competitors for motorcycling because, well, when our life gets more full, motorcycling slips down the priority list. And I think there's another part of this that people don't particularly like to talk about, especially men. We're really bad at talking about this one. And that's when you become a parent for the first time or even for the second time. Even when you're happy about it, even when you're grateful to have been blessed with a child, even when you love that child more than anything else in the entire world, there can still be a sense of grief for your old life. And that might sound harsh and dramatic, and it's probably why many people don't openly talk about it, but I think it's honest. That old life that you led did exist, and there was very recently a version of me that could just grab the keys to the bike and disappear for a ride. That version of me could spend a Sunday morning doing absolutely nothing useful. That version of me could make plans without checking nap schedules or feeding schedules, school runs, childcare, and other various family commitments. But by the time this video is live, that version of me and that life that I was leading will be gone by all accounts. Now, I know it's for the best possible reasons, and it's normal to feel the loss of it. We can be excited about the new chapter that we're going into, but we can still miss parts of the old one. And I think owning a bike or having quite time-consuming hobbies can make that really obvious. Because riding is not just transport. For a lot of us, it's freedom and it's space and it's an opportunity to express ourselves. It's the one thing that reminds you that you're still a person outside of work and bills and adult life and responsibilities. So when riding takes a back seat, it can feel bigger than just not using the bike anymore. It can feel like a part of you has gone quiet for a bit. But here's the important bit and the good news that I want you all to leave this video with and take away with you. I don't think anything that I've just said is necessarily a bad thing. I don't think riding taking a back seat means you've failed yourself as a rider or that you've lost your identity all of a sudden. I don't think being a parent and having less time for yourself means that your old life is over forever. And I certainly don't think selling the bike or pausing riding or riding less even, or even just putting your family first makes you any less of a biker. It just means you're, how can I put it, in a different season of life. And I know that sounds like something you're probably going to see printed on a crappy mug in a garden centre, but it's true. Life has seasons. And some seasons are early morning rides and hanging out with your friends and going for a blast on the bike and taking the long way home after work. And other seasons, like the one I'm about to go into, are for nappies, not sleeping, night feeds, and doing school runs. Some seasons give you loads of freedom, while others ask a lot more of you. And right now, for me, I'm about to go into one of those seasons where riding probably can't be a priority. And that's okay, because I've been here before, I've done this, and I've come out the other side of it. I know that the early days is going to feel like everything has changed permanently. I'm going to be tired. The house is going to be more chaotic than normal. Nobody knows what day it is, and we're going to be working out a whole new lifestyle and routine. The very idea of putting my leathers on and going out for a ride feels absolutely ridiculous. But then slowly, without noticing, a new normal will start to form. The baby will sleep for longer, the routine will settle, and I'll get better at leaving the house. I'll know that anyone going through this, you'll find a rhythm, and then one day, out of absolutely nowhere, a gap will appear in your diary. It won't be a big one, maybe just an hour or two, maybe just enough to get the bike out the garage and go nowhere special, and then come home again and get back into the routine. And I know that that first ride back for myself will feel incredible, not because it's going to be the best roads that I take or going on the longest ride, but because I'm finally going to be able to wake up that part of me that had to go quiet, to make room, to have someone else in my life that needed me. And I know, I remember why I loved biking in the first place, why the bike stayed in the garage for so long. And weirdly, I reckon riding will probably start to feel new again, because with almost everything we do in life, when you have to step away from it and take some time out because there's other priorities, coming back to it can, well, it will make you appreciate it more. And that is the bit that I want to hold on to. And hopefully anyone who's watching this, who's going through something similar, will be able to take away. Because riding for me is going to be taking a back seat for a little while. But I don't think that means it's going to be disappearing. I think it's more, it's going to be changing, and having access to it is going to be shifting. And maybe that's the healthiest way of looking at it. Now, this video has become all about self-reflection, and I think it does make me wonder how many riders are currently subscribed to my channel, watching this video, who are out there in the ether, who are in this exact same position. Hopefully this video has found some of you, and you can let me know in the comments if any of this is relatable to you, because I want to know what your reason was for stepping away from biking. For me, it's having a young family, but I'm interested to know what other reasons people have had to take a step back. I'm about to become a dad again. I'm about to go back into the newborn phase, and riding is probably going to become less frequent for a while, maybe a lot less frequent. And part of me is sad about that, because I absolutely love the bike. I love making these videos, and I love being part of this community. And I love the space that biking gives me. I love that riding still makes me feel like a version of myself I found when I started biking in my 30s. But I also know that something bigger is happening. My family's growing. My son is about to become a big brother. My daughter is going to arrive, and I'm going to get to find out who she is and support her grow and develop through life. I know from experience that these early days are absolute chaos, but they're also precious. They go fast. Blink and you miss it fast. So if riding has to take a back seat for a little while, then so be it. That's okay with me, because the bike will still be here when I come back to it. And if it isn't, then, well, maybe there'll be time to buy another one, and we'll be sitting looking at a different bike behind me. But those first few weeks with my daughter, those first few months with my family and this new family unit we're building, I won't get those back. And it's important for all of us, when life changes, that we don't miss the life that's happening right in front of us. The answer is not to cling desperately to the old version of life, but simultaneously not give up on that life either. Except that for a while, a proper ride might not be the 3-hour ride across Wales that it used to be. It might be more like a 35-minute popping out to the shops or taking the bike to work once a week. It might be cleaning the bike in the garage whilst the baby monitor sits on the shelf. It might be watching bike videos at midnight with the newborn asleep on your chest. It might be keeping the connection alive in 1,000 different tiny ways until those bigger gaps come back into your life. Because eventually, they do. And a new normal appears. And then one day, you look back and realise that your free time has started to creep back in. Your hobbies become more frequent. The bike is coming out more often. And because you had to wait for it, because you had to miss it for so long, because it wasn't just available whenever you wanted it, you will fall in love with it all over again. And that's the bit that I'm looking forward to the absolute most. And for now, I'm just going to go and enjoy this evening ride as the sun goes down. I'm going to set the route in the Beeline Moto app. I'm going to let my little Beeline Moto 2 device here set the course, and I'm going to disappear for an hour. And then I'm going to come back home, put the bike away, and I'm going to get ready for the next bit of chaos in my life. Because by the time you see this video, my daughter will be here. and my life will have changed all over again. So that might well have been my last ride. Thanks for watching. Ride safe, and hopefully I'll see you in more videos in the future.